Lastly, we have the API, which is the messenger between the backend and database and the front end of your application. So it's the glue that holds your application together. Now, going back to that metaphor that your database is like a filing cabinet, you can think of your API like an office clerk or office assistant. Now, you're going to tell this person some sort of command. They're going to take that command, go to the database, which is that filing cabinet, get some data out of it or do something to the data, process what just happened, and bring it back to you in a readable fashion. Now, that is all the job of the API. Now, on this page, you're going to see API groups or an API group, and API endpoints just happen to be organized into groups. We can go ahead and click into it and see at a high level all the different endpoints in that group. Mine happen to be all the auto-generated CRUD endpoints for my database tables. A few things to point out here on the right side. We have the API documentation for you in Swagger, which is automatically synced and a link to it. We give you your base request URL, which you can one-click copy that to your clipboard. You'll need that to connect to a front end. You can easily add a new API endpoint here in the top right. And let's go ahead and click into this. So if I click into this get merchant, which is going to query all the merchant records, we can manipulate this to get as complex and exact as we need to be. So what we're seeing here is the basic workflow or anatomy of your API endpoint. We're saying there's three different parts. First being the input, so any information or query parameters that your API endpoint needs to take to do what it's going to do. Two is the function stack, and this is the actual inner workings of what your API endpoint is actually doing. Here, there's one function. It's querying all the records in my merchant table. Lastly is the response, so something optional we will get back. But back to number two, your function stack. This is where you are going to get as complex and exact with your business logic as you want to get. We call it a stack because you can stack functions and they will be performed in a linear fashion. Now, we can easily add a function in a few different places. I'll hit the any plus button here and this window opens up, and we have functions in things like database requests, data manipulation. We can store things in variables, do conditional if-then statements, etc. You can even hit an external API request if you want to integrate with a third-party service. So once you've built your API, you can actually test it out in Xano by hitting run and debug, which opens up this window. If you had any inputs, which this endpoint doesn't, you'd put them in here and you'd hit run, and then you'd also have the debugger to check out what's going on. So that's it for the API. You should have what you need now with the database and API to get started building something in Xano. If you get stuck or need help, please check out our resources, our documentation, many of our YouTube tutorials, or chat with us in the forum or on support. Thanks for taking the product tour, and we're really excited to have you building in Xano.